Welcome to Picasso Sculpture. In a career spanning 7 decades, Picasso explored numerous and unprecedented approaches to sculpture, reinventing the medium time and again. Here's exhibition curator Anne Umland in MoMA's Department of Painting and Sculpture.
Picasso, of all the great modern artists, is probably the name that is most familiar, yet the world of his sculpture is relatively unknown.
Exhibition curator Anne Temkin.
Picasso kept most of the sculptures that he made with him in the studio or in his house. And he had them around not in the way that an art collector would have them, very beautifully arranged here and there in a room. He had them around as if they were furniture or pets, just for company. And I think that what that speaks to is the way these sculptures have a charisma and almost a force of personality.
And conservator Linda Zeicherman.
Picasso was not a trained sculptor, and that allowed him a huge amount of freedom because he didn't know what the rules were. He was skilled at taking a shape or a thing and seeing possibilities in it that other people would never, ever see.
Picasso made sculpture in several distinct episodes throughout his long career.
You'll see everything from traditional bronzes and plasters to objects made out of cardboard boxes or pieces of scrap wood. If you're able to leave the show and go out and try to look at the world through Picasso's eyes, hopefully it's a very different place.
Curator Anne Umland.
Here we are standing in front of 2 guitars, one in cardboard, one in sheet metal, that at the time they were made upset just about every conventional notion of what a sculpture could be. Sculpture, up until this point, had always been something that was about solids, right? It was about masses, about carving or molding heavy, resistant materials like marble or like clay. And the cardboard guitar does away with all of that. One of its most primary materials is space. Picasso has opened up the interior of this instrument to our eyes.
Conservator Linda Zeicherman.
The sound hole, which in a real guitar is the absence of material, projects outwards as a tube instead of just being a hole in a flat surface.
Now, look more closely at the metal guitar.
It's loosely sewn together with wires used as stitching because Picasso was not trained as a metal sculptor and he did not know how to solder things together. It's very loose. When you pick it up, it looks like such a solid thing, but actually it shifts in your hands.
It's neither painting or sculpture. It's a very new sort of object. Right around this time, figures pretty much vanish, and their surrogates or stand-ins become these guitars or bottles or glasses that have curves, they have positives, they have voids, just like people's bodies do. Picasso is, I think, playing with the idea of how simple can a shape get, so that the curve on the left side of this guitar, for instance, will show up in pictures of the period positioned so that it reads as an ear, or bend it and you get buttocks.
Picasso created Head of a Woman in 1909. Just a few years earlier, he and fellow artist Georges Braque had revolutionized painting by inventing Cubism. They deconstructed their subjects and presented them as fractured forms viewed simultaneously from multiple perspectives. Here, Picasso translated his Cubist vision into sculpture. Anne Temkin is chief curator of painting and sculpture.
I think the way you see that most in this head of Fernand, his girlfriend at the time, is in the hair. Because the hair, for me, resembles practically the landscape or a townscape. We know that he made many Cubist studies of Fernand in painting that summer of 1909 when he was living in a little Spanish town called Horta. And when you look at her hair, you almost feel like you're looking at that little hill town with these small units of form that obviously is not how anybody's head, fortunately, really looks, but instead is a way of modeling a head so that different areas catch light differently. And the different facets give you a way to build that head together in your own brain instead of just passively receiving what you recognize as looking exactly like the kind of head you would see on the woman across the street from you.
Picasso made the sculpture, The Glass of Absinthe, in 6 unique versions. Absinthe is a licorice-flavored liqueur that was popular in turn-of-the-century Paris. Walk around the sculptures and compare them. Curator Ann Temkin.
You think of a glass as something that's pretty much the same all around, but here as he opens this one up and sort of unpeels the interior of the glass, you have a very different experience of it from the left to the right or the back to the front. The inside of the glass is a transparent liquid, absinthe, but of course it's rendered, as is the glass, solidly and opaquely, and therefore the whole idea of what is solid and liquid, what is transparent and opaque, is made blurry or confused. It really blends painting and sculpture because he had these 6 versions cast and then chose to paint each one with a different set of colors. You can see how careful Picasso was to make each one a unique personality.
Picasso added a real absinthe spoon to each of the 6 painted bronze sculptures. Conservator Linda Zeicherman.
They have piercings because when you prepare absinthe at the table, it's very bitter. You use a sugar cube on the spoon and you pour water over that. The sugar water drips into the absinthe, which begins as a clear green liquid, but when you add water and sugar to it, it turns cloudy, milky white.
If this were really happening, the sugar cube would get dissolved, but of course a bronze sugar cube cannot be dissolved.
Picasso made these sculptures in the spring of 1914. It is likely no coincidence that that same year the French government banned the consumption of absinthe.